How much will 200 of Polkadot's native token called DOT be worth during this bull run? Now, to answer that question, we first have to assume a hypothetical scenario. Now, what is that scenario? Let's say we assume that DOT were to, let's say, go to the price of $150. Now, of course, at that point, 200 DOT would be worth $30,000 because 200 times 150 is 30,000. But even besides that point, do I think $150 is realistic for DOT during this bull run? I think so, even though nothing I say is financial advice nor a guarantee. But let me explain why. Because if you take a look at it as of right now, there's so many blockchains, right? So many networks. But for the most part, many of them can't freely send data and value to each other, meaning that they lack interoperability. Now, that's kind of a Kafka situation, because of course, that's not desirable. And even if we take a look at a very famous example of what I mean by this, you take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're both massive, right? But then they can't freely send data and value to each other. That's kind of crazy to even think about. Like, for instance, let's say if I was using like T-Mobile and my friend's using AT&T, and then I can't call my friend because we have a different carrier, let's say. That's kind of caca, right? I mean, that would be a big issue. Of course, that's not an issue, but imagine if it was. That'd be a big problem. But just because the blockchain technology space overall is still relatively up and coming, there's going to be many problems, of course, right? And there is something like Polkadot that steps in and saves the day because their goal is to connect blockchains together. They're focused on interoperability. And that's how amazing they are. They understand this forward-thinking mindset. And keep in mind, there's going to be more blockchains that are going to pop up in the future. It's not going to stop right now, in my opinion, naturally, of course, right? You take a look at, for instance, blockchain adoption, the attention for cryptocurrencies. I think it's naturally going to increase moving forward. And again, there's going to be more networks, more blockchains, and they need this interoperability aspect. So if you take a look at something like Polkadot, man, it's actually trying to solve real world problems. It doesn't care about partnering up with athletes, with like celebrities. They could care less about that. Many other projects out there, instead of, spending millions towards development, they would rather spend it millions towards like getting hyper fans. But again, I think that's the opposite when it comes to Polkadot because they're actually focused on fundamentals, and that's what I really like about it. And also, when it comes to Polkadot, they have something so genius, and that is something called Kusama. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, what is Kusama? Here's the thing. Kusama is basically a testing ground when it comes to Polkadot. It's a canary network when it comes to Polkadot. Now, some people may think, who cares about a testing ground? This is caca, all this type of stuff. But I disagree because think about this, right? If let's say we want to buy a car, we usually do a test drive in most cases. We want to test the car out, and then if we like it, then we get the car. Also, in some other cases, people, they offer gym memberships, right? But then they also offer free trials to see that, hey, if you like it, then you can become a full-on member. Now, that's the kind of mindset that I think Polkadot has, which is why there's something called Kusama. Now, the special thing about Kusama is that if, let's say, a project wants to build on Polkadot, usually they're going to build on Kusama first. Now, you may be wondering, why would that be the case? First of all, it's to test out the project under real economic conditions. So it's to make sure that the project is, all good, so to speak, in a sense. But then there's also several other benefits. Like, for instance, instead of jumping head on to Polkadot, it's far easier to rent building space on Kusama. And it's also, far easier to make changes on as well. So that's the way I take a look at Kusama. That's how amazing it is. So that's how amazing Kusama is. Quite essentially, again, it's like a testing ground in a sense for Polkadot. Now, why is this so beneficial in my opinion? I think it's going to attract like better quality projects because if let's say a project, they can't jump, straight head on to something like Polkadot, okay, they can start off with Kusama first. Maybe they're like a small and up and coming project. Again, it just attracts more talent, more, amazing developers. At least that's the way I take a look at it. So if people like to say that Polkadot is trash and caca, sometimes they haven't considered its use case. And also on top of that, they actually, in some cases, in my opinion, haven't considered that Kusama actually plays quite a vital role when it comes to Polkadot. Now, granted, does a project have to necessarily always move on to Polkadot? No, because, for instance, there is something called Moonriver on Kusama, and I'm very bullish on Moonriver, by the way. You can check some of those videos out after you watch this one, of course, right? But you get my point. When it comes to Polkadot and Kusama, man, they play a very amazing role. They kind of have a symbiotic relationship. I think that's what they would like to call it sometimes, right? Because it's kind of like a Batman and as well as like a Robin. Polkadot's like a Batman, but hey, we need a sidekick. We need something like Robin. And that's exactly what Kusama is. When it comes to Polkadot, I think it's very special. So again, when people like to say that it has no future, I completely disagree. And also think about this, right? When it comes to this like whole interoperability space, like focus on that, Polkadot, it's pretty much the market leader. At least that's the way you take a look at it. It's the most like popular, I would say, has a very strong community, has a lot of fans, a lot of hype. So yeah, I don't think it's bad. Not to mention DOT, in the native token of Polkadot, it's listed in a bunch of major exchanges. So when people like to say that, yeah, it doesn't have enough attention because it's not partnering up with celebrities and fans, I disagree, because I think if anything, this is actually a lot better than, let's say, a project that has a lot of celebrity endorsements, but then isn't really listed in a bunch of major exchanges. Because if you actually take a look at it, if people take a look at an exchange, right? If they take a look at DOT, for instance, that's actually better marketing, because the people who are actually, into the world of cryptocurrencies, they're going to probably be more inclined to study and look into something like Polkadot, as opposed to, let's say, like a celebrity partnering up with a project. They're promoting this project to their fans. Their fans probably don't know what it is. So it's much better, I think, what Polkadot's doing. Again, its approach by DOT being listed in many major exchanges. And this is key, especially during a fully fledged bull run, because people need easy access to it. If let's say DOT was this like hidden thing, let's say they can only find it in like several decentralized exchanges, not really popular, then of course it's going to be really difficult to gain that type of traction during a fully fledged bull run. But again, DOT is listed, in so many major places. So that's a thumbs up for me. Now, with all that being said, $150 may sound insane still to some people, but I disagree, because if it were to go to that price, considering current circulating supply, market cap would be around $227 billion. Not crazy. Even though it's around a 35x from here, that market cap is still over $300 billion less than Ethereum's all-time high market cap. So it's not insane. Not to mention, you take a look at the bullish factors for this bull run. The amount of crypto owners is over 600 million, more than ever before in history, according to Crypto.com research. You take a look at the Ethereum ETF, the Bitcoin ETF, the number of institutional investors, the amount of enterprise adoption. You take a look at the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. It currently holds over 220,000 Bitcoin. So you can only imagine that. When it comes to all these amazing factors, is this bull run going to be caca? Is it going to be bad? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be better than what we saw back in 2021. I mean, it's just simple numbers, right? As of right now, more cryptocurrency owners, more institutional adoption, more enterprise investors. So I don't think it's going to be bad. Now, of course, I'm not going to say it's going to happen like, next week in terms of the peak of the bull run, but it's going to take some time. Now, let's say around 6 months from right now, a year from right now, I think things could be very different. Imagine once Bitcoin goes to the price of $150,000, let's say, I don't see why DOT won't go along with the ride. As the old saying goes, a high tide raises all ships, meaning that usually when things are good, things that surround it will usually go along with the ride as well. It's like, for instance, right, let's say, again, a high tide, and let's say the sea, even the Kaka ships will go along with the ride. Of course, like, let's say they're not like having holes or whatnot where they sink, but you get my point. So as altcoins do well, as Bitcoin, reaches these crazy levels, I don't see why something like DOT, again, won't join that ride and let's say go to the price of $150. It's not too crazy after all. And what I like about Polkadot is that it's not so big, it's not like a dinosaur, like for instance, like a Ethereum, like a Bitcoin, where like there really isn't that much like good upside anymore. In my opinion, from as of right now, I'm not saying the long term, but I'm just saying like in a time span of like 6 months to a year, they're kind of like dinosaurs. But then when it comes to Polkadot, again, it's not that massive, but it's not so small either where like the risk is so high, because maybe there are like small caps out there that have like a $100,000 market cap, like a micro cap, for instance, that could very well do like a 1000x. Who knows, right? We just never know. Maybe they could do that, but at the same time, the risk is so high. So instead of dabbling with that, I'd much rather just dabble with something like DOT. I believe that DOT is, very amazing, and I like it as one of my foundational pieces in my portfolio. I don't only hold DOT, of course, but again, it's one of my major players because I do believe that it's a good foundation for me. Instead of acquiring something like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, I'd much rather just choose something like DOT because, again, it's not so big, but it's not like super tiny either where like the risk is like very high, if that makes sense. And again, when I take all those amazing factors into consideration, DOT at the price of $150 during this bull run wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. I think it's that amazing, and I think that this bull run could hypothetically be that special. And make sure to subscribe if you gain value from this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.